Infinite is a villain best remembered for being, well, kinda weak, right? However, I believe he's catching the short end of the stick. See, Infinite had the incredible misfortune of being placed in a game that wasn't well received by a large portion of the fanbase while also being critically panned. As a result, this led to his character largely being forgotten and overlooked, a fate not dissimilar from other characters within this franchise. This negative stigma mixed with poor dialogue has led to a lot of underestimation when it comes to the character of Infinite. However, if we take a dive into the story of Sonic Forces, as well as the prequel comics, we can unpack tons of information that prove not only that Infinite is a powerful force to be reckoned with, but also that he's one of the most dangerous foes Sonic has ever faced. So without further delay, join me as we discover why Infinite is more powerful than you think. I figure that the best way to understand Infinite's character is to view things chronologically, as this is, after all, a character that evolves a decent amount over time. The first time Infinite appears is not long after Eggman discovers the Phantom Ruby on the far reaches of his Arsenal Pyramid base. While running lengthy tests trying to figure out the mysterious powers of the Ruby, an alarm is triggered by a Jackal mercenary squad, alerting Eggman's defenses. This squad is led by none other than Infinite himself. Brandishing his sword, Infinite swiftly led his forces into the thick of battle, making light work of Eggman's machines. Now, it's important to note that at this point in time, Infinite has no powers, unlike Sonic, Shadow, or Tails. He's using nothing but pure skill and speed to cut through Eggman's battalions, and he makes it look quite effortless. It's all the more impressive when comparing his combat prowess to those in the Sonic universe, who are also regular beings with no powers. Lacking any supernatural ability, many resort to using a variety of weaponry, and we saw this demonstrated when the denizens of the world took up arms against Eggman. However, aside from a few standout characters, most only proved further that they are ill-equipped for war. This makes Infinite and his mercenary crew stand apart from the rest. Not only are they fighting Eggman's machines up close and personal, much like Sonic would, but they are doing so without powers or the use of Wispins. Using his speed, Infinite made his way past the hordes of egg pawns all the way to Eggman himself, whereupon trying to end him then and there, he would wind up striking the Phantom Ruby that Eggman held out in fear. This revealed to both a vision of the world in ruin. Catching Infinite off guard due to this vision, Eggman is able to shove him off his Eggmobile and gain the upper hand. Meanwhile, the egg pawns begin to overwhelm the Jackal squad, leaving them to Eggman's mercy. Surprisingly though, Eggman offers to work with Infinite, as the Phantom Ruby had revealed that both seemingly want to see the world changed, and this intrigued the Doctor. Despite the pleas of his crew, Infinite decides to take Eggman up on this offer, as he replies that he's tired of going through the motions. This implies to us that Infinite didn't find his mercenary work to be important or fulfilling, and he didn't have too much investment in it to begin with. All it ended up being was a method for him to make money. However, upon discovering the power that the Phantom Ruby held within, Infinite had not only found purpose, but a tool to change the world to his liking. Now we get the most infamous moment for Infinite, and what I believe caused the most damage to his reputation. Infinite and his Jackal squad had been assigned by Eggman to guard his research facility within Mystic Jungle. Prior to what we see in the game, Shadow had infiltrated the region and made quick work of Infinite's squad before making his way further towards the facility. Here we would see how aggravated this made Eggman, as this was the facility where he was running tests on the Phantom Ruby. Any interruptions here could jeopardize his future plans for war. Eggman also claims that these are the best mercenaries around. Just like stated previously, these guys are very skilled. However, lacking the power and speed that Shadow possesses, they stood no chance. When Shadow eventually reaches the facility entrance, Infinite quickly makes his way there to stop him. And it's here where what was supposed to be a character-defining moment for Infinite ended up making him somewhat of a joke to many. See, Infinite before the events of Forces is a character who is supposed to be full of himself. He calls himself the ultimate mercenary, and Eggman's statements do seem to back this up. So we know these guys are very competent, especially Infinite. However, being so skilled, we see his egotism get the better of him as he matches up with someone who is leagues above him for the first time. Shadow ends up making quick work of the Jackal, calling him worthless before infiltrating the facility, and for the first time we see Infinite lose all of his confidence as fear takes hold of him. This This is portrayed rather poorly, as Infinite just shouts over and over again that he isn't weak, and I get what the writers intended, but I don't think it comes across very well. This is a character who was supposed to be the best at what he does. However, when coming across someone more powerful than him, he was humbled for the first time in his life, which led to fear and anger overwhelming him. While the writing here wasn't the best, I do like what they did with his character. The setup is very similar to Darth Maul. Like Infinite, Maul is a character who is very egotistical due to his skill and power, and we see that reflected in both of their behaviors. When Infinite lost his battle to Shadow, for the first time in his life, fear took over, leading him to question himself, and eventually leading to a transformation of his character that we will look at later on. In the same way, Darth Maul lost his battle to Obi-Wan after letting his ego get the best of him. When we next see him, fear and anger has taken hold of him, corrupting his mind and will. But for both of these villains, this loss was vital in transforming them into something more fearsome altogether, as it stoked a fire within. From this point forward, Infinite would don a mask, symbolizing a rebirth as he sheds his weakness. But this also serves as a reminder of his past failures. It's reminiscent of Bruce Wayne taking on the Batman persona, flipping his fear into his greatest tool. No longer would Infinite be held down by his past flaws, and with Eggman finishing up his tests on the Phantom Ruby, Infinite would soon have all the power he needed to conquer the world at Eggman's side. And let's talk about these tests that Eggman ran on the Phantom Ruby, because this would give us a baseline of Infinite's newfound strength. In the prequel comic stress test, Eggman would use the power of the Phantom Ruby to create Chief Pachacamac's village along with Chaos. From there, he would control the duplicate Chaos to fight both Silver and Knuckles simultaneously. This wound up being a battle that pushed both Knuckles and Silver, proving to Eggman that this Ruby is capable of being more powerful than the Master Emerald itself when it's in the right hands. With the success of his test, Eggman would proceed to fuse the Phantom Ruby to Infinite, creating his ultimate weapon. Infinite's first test after being made anew was to take care of Omega, who had infiltrated Eggman's Arsenal Pyramid base. Disobeying orders from Rouge, Omega decided that this stealth operation would become a full-on annihilation of Eggman's creations. Crushing everything in his path with no remorse, Eggman had no other option but to unleash Infinite upon the machine. Omega is an extremely powerful character. When he wants to destroy something or someone, there is very little that's able to stop him from doing so, which is why when coming face to face with Infinite, Omega was ready to gun him down as soon as he appeared. But despite his trigger-happy nature, Infinite would prove to be quicker and stronger, making sure that Omega had no chance to retaliate. In a flash of red light, Infinite had destroyed Omega. This victory would come so easily to Infinite that he compared the killing machine to crab meat, one of Eggman's more rudimentary creations. Alerted of Omega's disappearance within the pyramid, Shadow would try to rush to his aid, but waiting there for him was Infinite, now infinitely more powerful than the last time the two had met. In fact, upon their first meeting, Infinite had such little impact on Shadow that he has no memory of ever meeting him before. Now the playing field is a bit more fair, as both characters are powered up. Infinite would get the jump on Shadow, sending him into a virtual reality and toying with his mind. But much to the Jackal's surprise, Shadow would be strong enough to break free of this state. However, this was only a minor setback according to Infinite, as fine-tuning of the Ruby hasn't been finished yet. So here we get to see the early development of Infinite's power long before he reaches his peak strength. He was able to demonstrate that he can go above and beyond the heroes of this world when put on equal footing with them. And this is something that people often overlook when referring to Infinite's character. People often like to remember the initial battle with Infinite and Shadow, when that's like comparing two fighters in a different weight class. Given the time frame, we know that it would take Eggman and Infinite about a month to fine-tune the Phantom Ruby to their liking, as it's around this time that together they would draw out Sonic. During this confrontation, Sonic would be overconfident in his ability to save the day. It was this false sense of security that Sonic had which ultimately led him to underestimate Infinite, leading to one of Sonic's quickest defeats ever. Throughout the course of this battle, Sonic would find himself trying to play defense as Infinite controlled the pacing of the fight. It's evident that within this short time span, Infinite has come a long way as a character. Here we see a calm demeanor from the Jackal, who not only has clearly studied Sonic thanks to Eggman's knowledge, but also defeats him in a very similar way that mirrors his own loss to Shadow. The next part of Infinite's story is something that most overlook, and this is once again due to the writing and pacing of Sonic forces. But we're told that Eggman and Infinite's power go unmatched, leading them to conquering 99% of the world. This is genuinely the closest that Eggman has ever come to total victory. Thanks to Infinite, Eggman has his greatest foe captured and most of the planet under his rule. The citizens of Sonic's world did try to take up arms against Infinite, however, his power ended up being too much for most, causing them to hide in fear for their lives. Things do get interesting here though, as Infinite begins to mock the player avatar, teasing them for their fear, and it's similar to how Shadow made Infinite feel months ago. This new power has gone to his head, and it seems that he wants to use this power to make people feel the fear and doubt that he did when Shadow beat him. But without even knowing it, this act of hubris would be the precursor to his downfall. The next time we see Infinite, he's disposing of the Phantom Ruby prototypes when Silver arrives to stop him. Silver would manage to get in a few hits on Infinite, making him drop a prototype Ruby, which ends up playing a huge part in the story. However, Infinite would still defeat the Hedgehog with relative ease. And if you haven't been keeping count, at this point, Infinite has now defeated all of the big three when it comes to the Sonic universe. In his debut game, he was able to subdue Shadow, defeat Sonic, and mollywop Silver, and he was able to do this in different ways. When it came to Shadow, he messed with his mind. For Sonic, he outnumbered and outmaneuvered him. And lastly, he straight up overpowered Silver. None of these guys are pushovers, and while they might not have been in super form, we've seen them all accomplish incredible feats before without the use of Chaos Emeralds. Sonic even gets beaten by Infinite again here when he rushes to the aid of Silver. He does end up putting up a better fight this time around as his powers have grown a lot, but it still isn't anywhere close to Infinite's. However, once again taking a page from Shadow, Infinite allows Sonic to live after defeating him because he believes that Sonic is too pathetic to kill. This pattern that Infinite is displaying really shows us how much this loss to Shadow has affected him mentally. While most people he's fighting won't notice this, he's self-projecting, putting others in the position that he was in not long ago. While his demeanor and power might have changed, he's still afraid of defeat and the shame that it brought him. After defeating Sonic, Infinite reports back to Eggman, and we learn something rather important, as Infinite states that the Phantom Rubies can only be activated by people with strong willpower, much like how a Green Lantern ring operates. This will be important later on as we talk about the player avatar and why they aren't just any normal character. The scene also gives us an example of poor writing that makes Infinite's character look way worse than he is. See, Infinite informs Eggman that he once again beat Sonic, but let him live since he still can't match his power. However, we now know that Infinite is doing this because of his ego. He wants others to feel the shame of defeat and experience the fear that he felt at the hands of Shadow. Strangely, Eggman chastises Infinite for letting Sonic live, telling him that Sonic is a big issue. This in turn makes Infinite look kind of dumb, right? As of course, Sonic is going to be the downfall of both Eggman and Infinite, but at the beginning of the game, Infinite had already beaten Sonic and given him to Eggman. Thanks to the game's timeline, we know that Eggman had Sonic imprisoned for 6 months, so why not just finish him off then? They make this seem like it's entirely an issue caused by Infinite alone, when in reality, Eggman had a much better opportunity earlier on, so once again, I chalk this up to poor writing. Now, let's briefly talk about the Avatar, as their character is in a way a creation of Infinite's and important to his story. Infinite's true villain origin began when he first experienced fear at the hands of Shadow. Mimicking that, he would go on to strike terror in others, one of his victims being the player avatar. This is a character who mirrors Infinite, but instead of using a traumatic moment to give in to evil, they instead chose a better path. So in a way, the avatar is what Infinite could have become. Like Infinite, the avatar experiences defeat and fear. However, they choose to not reciprocate those feelings, but rather fight for others so that they don't have to experience them. Because of this, the avatar has an extremely high willpower. Again, much like Infinite, these two would meet face to face once again when Infinite began attacking Metropolis, taking down the rest of the Resistance. During this conflict, Infinite and Eggman would destroy 80% of the Resistance's forces. However, thanks to the Phantom Ruby prototype and their incredibly strong willpower, the Avatar would be able to withstand all attacks from Infinite, causing him to retreat. This isn't technically a loss for Infinite, as the battle comes to more of a stalemate, and in the end, he still managed to take down most of the Resistance. But here we learn that there is someone who can equal his willpower. With Sonic stating that he gets more powerful every second, as well as the Avatar having extremely potent willpower, that of which matches Infinite, we know that this is an extremely powerful and capable duo. Toss in the Phantom Ruby prototype, which rivals the power of the Master Emerald, and these two are on a different level altogether. Which brings me to this point. Many will state that Infinite isn't powerful due to his loss to Sonic and the Avatar, since neither had to enter a super state during the fight, which is something that Sonic has often had to do as a last resort in order to save the world. Yet I would argue that the combination of Sonic's growing power and the will-powered Phantom Ruby equate to something around the strength of the Chaos Emeralds. My basis for this is the next meeting that Sonic, the Avatar, and Infinite have. Sonic and the Avatar would be sent into null space, a pocket dimension created by the Phantom Ruby that extends forever with no means of escape. This is, for all extensive purposes, a black hole. Despite things looking grim for the two of them, they were able to use unbelievable power and speed chained together in order to almost instantly escape null space. This is also the same move that the two would later use to take down Infinite. Super form or not, we can't overlook the power that the Avatar and Sonic were able to achieve together. The only other time we've seen Sonic able to escape black holes was when he was in his super form. During the final battle between the three, Infinite also was already in a weakened state, using the majority of his power to create a sun which would rain down on the world. If Infinite was at full power during this fight, it's hard to say how the tide of this battle would have swung, but we surely know that Sonic and the Avatar were achieving feats that we have never seen Sonic capable of before in base form. While Infinite may not have been the most powerful enemy that Sonic has ever come across, I do think that he is a formidable opponent that had the unfortunate circumstance of having bad writing attached to him. Even with that, we're able to see just how powerful of a foe he was, and I do hope that we see him again in the future. But let me know what you think about Infinite. With all of this evidence, do you believe that he is a powerful villain? Would you like to see him appear again? Check out the video here for more Sonic lore, and subscribe if you haven't already to keep up to date with all things Sonic. As always guys, I wish you all the best, take care, peace.